This is behind the hangar at Gowan Field. That's Tanabe, Sid Tanabe, with his first attempt at radio control. That's his champion. There's my champion. I built it in 1955 and flew it and flew it and flew it and flew it and flew it. And this day I crashed it. The relay, the leaf spring inside the relay fell out. I never did find it. And what happened is it went in. I had Galloping Ghost on it. It went in, and we'd had a quagmire of a rain. The only thing that was out there that was bad was a great big boulder. And I center punched it just beautifully and tore the airplane to pieces. This is out at San Bernardino. This is Larry Beeson. He was stationed at Norton at the time, and that was his airplane. And all these airplanes are his except for that bare bones being rebuilt Astrohog. That's one of his young boys. He had 4 boys. 2 of them, all 3 of them were career officers in the Air Force. The last I heard was one was major, and the one was lieutenant colonel and retired. The other was a colonel retired, and Larry himself here retired as lieutenant colonel. That's my Oldsmobile there. And this Smog Hog has got a Bramco in it, a ground-based Bramco with a remote box, and it's got the old Bonner Square servos in it. And there's Larry, oh smiling Larry. Here we go, skipping back to the Air National Guard in Boise. And this is a single-channel, hard-tube Berkeley Kid in the front seat. We're out at Los Alamitos Quarter Horse Track, across the street from Los Alamitos Naval Air Station, down in Los Angeles, down by San Diego. This is Howard Bonner's airplane with orbit gear and, of course, Bonner servos, and it's got an 8-channel radio in it. And it's an Astrohog modified. A lot of stanchions out here in this parking lot, and very dangerous. You could very easily hit one. You see all the Larks emblems on the backs of guys' coats and stuff. And there's Bob Dunham with his back to the camera, and Gordon Gaebert from Texas. And right here is Bob Dunham's airplane. And he painted this thing. I watched him in the back of his garage while it was raining, and not a single blush. That was Howard Bonner's airplane there with Bonner. That was Dunham's airplane. And this is Gordon Gabert's airplane from Dallas, Texas. Anyway, this is Dunham taking off. And here we are with Reed's Bang Bang. And this is Dunham walking back in, cigarette in his mouth. He's talking to some kid. And, of course, it has his radio gear in it and Bonner servos. This is Eddie Nacarato's airplane, which was having a difficulty getting off. It was flying just single channel. And it finally did get off, but not very successful. And anyway, that what you saw behind it was the grandstand at the Quarter Horse racetrack at Los Alamitos. Nice landing approach. Another airborne. We're at we're at the model airport at Sepulveda Basin, flood control. Model airport at Sepulveda Basin, which is up at Van Nuys. And there's somebody taking off, flying in orbit. And there's an orbit-equipped live wire champion. And here's the Nacaratos again, and boy, he's terrible, terrible, terrible. This aircraft had the typical problem, bad CG and bad gear, and it would never take off. All it would do was that. We'll see it again in a minute. Here's another guy, I can't remember his name, flying orbit, and doing successful, but he knew he hand launched. Here's Nacarato again, or whatever, and he hand launches, and his wife is flying it, and it gets up now this time. This little air thing here is a South American leopard. It's a kitten, came from South America. This is out in Hawaii. This is at Eva Beach and Barber's Point Naval Air Station. The guy dead center with a hat on is Colonel Art Johnson, an A#1 guy, greatest guy in the world. And this is Bob Shaw, and he was a pilot for Hawaiian Airlines. This is Colonel Art Johnson. I tell you, this guy was so nice. He later became, after he got out of the service and went to Delray Beach, Florida, he became a correspondent for RCM. And you couldn't find a nicer guy in the world. He didn't care who anybody knew he flew with toy airplanes. He himself, on his own name, sponsored the Hickam Base U-Control Club. Great guy. And he flew orbit. And here his airplane, moon-equipped with the eyes on the front, a Taurus. And these are the old abandoned runways at Barber's Point Naval Air Station. They were not able to handle the excess weights and everything else of the new aircraft, so they built new runways. And here's Bob again, the Hawaiian Airlines pilot with his Taurus. And he broke a prop. And this is E.G. Oshiro. He was a tech for Bell Telephone. And I called him my Irish friend because his name was Oshiro. He was a Japanese boy, and he was a #1 fellow, really nice guy. You couldn't ask for a better friend. And Anyway, there's Art in front of his Buick again, and Roadmaster, and there's Bob again, and with the Nomad, and Jack Albrecht will appreciate that because Jack always had a Nomad around to fly, and they were good fun. It was really blowing, as you can see. Over there at Barber's Point, it was very dry compared to the rest of the island, and here's Bob again putting stuff on his airplane. There's Art looking, and there's E-I-J-O. This is the first pictures of my Taurus, which was made from a kit that I got from Jerry Nelson from his factory in California, where his dad was making hospital beds. Jerry was making kits, and I brought back 3 of them. This is somebody flying. The Sultans, I brought back 3. I gave one to the local hobby dealer, Ted Freitas. I kept one, and I gave one to Lou Lucci, and he modified his extensively. And we have a bunch of Tauruses flying here and doing what Tauruses do, bounce around. We didn't have stabilization, and I don't know why everybody has to take all these pictures of airplanes flying. You really want to get up close and personal with people, and that's what the kind of pictures you want to take. Anyway, I have a lot of airborne pictures. You'll notice that the dirt on the film has cleaned up considerably because when you have something packed tightly on a reel, it doesn't get dirty. It's only this, hard. This is Lou Lucci's aircraft, his Sultan modified. I wanted to borrow this later to fly at the Nationals after I augured my bird, but he conveniently augured his too, so that didn't happen. Here is a Tory that belongs to Art Johnson, and it's either him or his son flying it. Probably his son, the way it was bouncing, I don't know. His son was 15 years old at the time, really nice guy. Here goes Lou Lucci's Sultan again, and here he goes again. And the Sultan, you always talk about how you now here's Art Johnson flying that aircraft, and you'll notice he's got a gold box in his hand. Lou's got the red hat, and Lou had a gold box space control, and he had lots of trouble with it and spongy and everything else. And later on, I got a Sampi, and I didn't have any trouble, but it was the same sponginess. And I once tried to tune it, and I found out that the superhet was not stable at all and had to go back to the factory to be retuned, or detuned as they called it. Guys like Kirkland flew 6 meters on regen Sampis because they didn't trust the superhets at all. And they were on 6 meters. Here goes the moon-equipped Art Johnson's bird again. Art could come in and plant this thing nose get down real hard, and it would not bounce. And so he never got a bounce out of his landings, even though he came down nose gear. Well, he got a little one there, but not much. And here's Art's son carrying the airplane in. His kids were nice kids. And as I say, this is about 1962, 63, and a long time ago. They're all old men now. Here goes Lou again. And doing whatever you do with airplanes like that in the sky above Hawaii. More pictures. And anyway, the sponginess of the analog proportional on single stick. Lou's was a single stick, mine was a single stick. This is a local guy with a Skylark, and it was a small airplane. It had about the same wing area as a Tory, but it had a real small fuselage, and so you couldn't put all the big gear and all the big engines and big equipment in it. So it restricted the Skylark 560 square inches to a smaller equipment. And here he comes bringing it back in. One of our locals there at Hawaii. And this guy here, this is an F-8 pilot from Kaneohe Naval Air Station. And this is Lou Lucci flying a Stormer with space control. This Marine pilot from Kaneohe flew F-8s beautifully. He was an instructor pilot, but he couldn't fly an RC with doodly squat. And anyway, there's somebody else taking off. And you can see an awful lot of grass growing through the runway, what used to be the runway. And that was because there just wasn't much macadam there. And of course, any heavy aircraft would just break right through it, even when it was brand new. And of course, with the later aircraft that were really heavy, they couldn't use these.